Hi, it's Dr. Maggie Perry with Tell Me What You're Proud Of. This is my fourth session with Jared, and today we're going to talk about his progress overall and what helped contribute to his progress. So, Jared, thanks so much for being here.
Hi, thank you.
Okay, so how have you been lately? I know this is our fourth session, so tell us how you've been.
Yeah, well, I've just been pretty sane. I've been, just everything. Sorry, let me just try to say that again. Um, yeah, just everything has been the same old. I'm not really, nothing really special has happened, no interesting events that has happened in my life, at least. I, just been going through the motions of work and school, and things have been looking pretty good on that end. So, just hoping that this whole coronavirus pandemic will come to an end very soon.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I imagine a lot of people feel that same way. And like, I know last time you talked about difficulty staying motivated, and especially during this pandemic. So
Mhm.
I'm happy to hear that work and school are going so well. And I know that you've kind of been in a different place at times in your life. Can you tell us where you've come from and how you got here?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part of my 20s, I mean, I didn't even realize it until I guess until much later on. But just everything that I encountered in my life, just either people or just like work settings, the type of environments that I was in, everything just felt pretty foreign. And I always had like this crazy sense of anxiety that would always just run through me. And especially when it came to, I guess, building my own identity is where I really, really struggled. So, I actually, went through the motions of, going to law school, that really didn't work out for me. And I just hit rock bottom at one point. And I just had no idea why I was in the state that I was in. Um,
Can you be more specific about that state?
yeah, I was not really building what I guess people can call, normal habits, independent habits, like what, just like my own hygiene routine, just taking a shower every day or, taking out my dog regularly. I mean, all these things just kind of fell apart. Nothing, I just didn't really care about much at the time. Felt very hopeless, very helpless, and just didn't feel like I had any value in society. So a lot of it just felt like chore.
I know you had a lot of trouble sleeping too. Do you want to say more about sleeping, what sleeping was like for you?
Yeah, I just had a lot of thoughts just running through my head. I remember clearly at the time, a lot of it just had to do with just a lot of my future growth and what that kind of looked like, what my plans look like. And I just kind of like fell into this insomniatic state where I just really, really hated sleeping. Um, every time that I would even think about, whenever nightfall came around and it was kind of like time to go to bed, I really dreaded it. It was not really a good feeling for me. And I just had to, I don't know how much I should say, but I did use a lot of, I smoked a lot of weed to try to put myself to sleep. And when even that almost became like it wasn't working, ineffective, that's when I feel like I started to really try to get some help and just see what I can do about it. And that kind of blossomed into, getting therapy too. So,
And then what was the process of getting out of that? What was it like to go from difficulty sleeping, difficulty with hygiene, depression, anxiety, hopelessness, helplessness, worthlessness, and just kind of difficulty engaging with the world around you? How did you get to a point where you now have a job and you're in grad school?
yeah, you know, even now, I still kind of look at my growth in that aspect, and I just can't really believe it. Um, but everything was definitely baby steps. I went from a position, or I went from a point where I literally felt like I didn't know what to do. I was like too old to to have a new trained skill set in some way. I just had all these negative thoughts in my head, intrusive thoughts in my head. So it was really just baby steps. Just first, just really focusing on myself and just focusing on my own mental health before thinking about what was, how do you say it, like what was expected of me of my age at that point. And so
And when you focused on your mental health, what'd you do?
when I focused on my mental health, I mean, the first thing I kind of discovered was, cycling, and cycling, and just being, volunteering at a dog shelter. Just things that I felt that was more me in some way, that felt like I felt good doing about. Not that a lot of people, I remember even at the time, some family members were like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? You should not be even focusing on those aspects because those should not even be prioritized. You should really start thinking about your future. And, but I really thought that focusing on my mental health before anything else would just needed to happen. Or just, yeah, I just needed to treat myself first before, really going out and yeah, yeah.
And how'd you learn to relate to your depression and like your depressive thoughts and your anxious thoughts differently? I imagine those didn't go away right away.
Yeah, it didn't. Especially with my anxious thoughts, the one thing that really helped me was just not to look too far into the consequences, not to look too far into what's going to happen, the results, because the more that I really thought about that, the more perfectionistic that I became, or the more that I wanted to avoid those events, right? That one example that I think I gave in the other session was, even just riding my bike, even taking it out, that would just give me a whole like oof, of anxiety. And just having this thought that people are all staring at me and looking at me. And, those are the types of thoughts that I would have. But once I just realized that, all you just need to do is maybe take your bike out and come back in and say that you did good. And, just give yourself a pat on the back instead of criticizing yourself for all these, what you perceive as like weaknesses, I guess, in a way. But this is an opportunity, even if it's just walking your bike, as ridiculous as that sounds. Uh, that was the first step, baby steps, and then now you know, I should be getting back into riding, but I still do love riding my bike.
Yeah, and I hear you say like even walking your bike became an opportunity. Can you talk more about how you internalize the idea that any kind of exposure or going towards your fear and anxiety in any kind of way became a source of opportunity for you?
Yeah, actually, this just happened yesterday, and I really, it's actually become sort of like a thing that I try to do on a daily basis where, just do one exposure in a sense, like a day. And so I went on Clubhouse and I just went on into a room. I knew nobody in there. I talked. I like try to make a question or try to make my point. I guess nobody really know how to answer to that. And at that moment, I had this whoosh of like anxiety, like, oh my God, did I make myself feel like an idiot or like what's going on? And they did kind of answer it and responded to what I had to say, but I still kind of felt weird. Um, but after a while, it was just like, okay, I did it. I actually did this. And, I'm pretty sure I can do it again. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. So yeah, it just really, I don't know, it just kind of I try just not to think too much about the consequences, especially when it comes to my schoolwork, right? So before it was just a lot of anxiety. And instead of just like focusing in the moment, focusing at the time of just like, kind of doing your work together and not thinking about the results, everything just kind of flowed a lot easier. Um, and yeah, so in those aspects, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you become process driven rather than outcome driven. So you
Hmm.
recognize that the process of doing exposure not only gives you practice in experiencing anxiety and thinking about anxiety as like a workout you weren't asking for, rather than something that's meaningful and important. It's just a physiological reaction to a perceived threat. But if you expose yourself on purpose to that over time, then you do start to get evidence that it's not as bad as it in some cases you get evidence that it's not as bad as you thought it would be, and then that's going to decrease your anxiety over time. In other cases you just learn that you can tolerate the uncertainty and the anxiety, and then that can also be a confidence booster. So I'm really happy to hear that you've internalized that and you go towards exposure on a regular basis. I'm also happy to hear about how you shifted out of perfectionism. So being outcome driven and really being preoccupied with the consequences or the results is really perfectionistic. Um, is there something that you did to help yourself stop thinking about the results and start thinking more about the process?
Uh, I I'm not really exactly sure when that happened, but it was definitely a gradual it was just a gradual moment. I think just generally speaking, when I have to reflect back on my mental health, it was more I really needed to take things moment by moment. Because, I think for the most part of my life, for the majority part of my life, everything was about the outcome, right? Everything was about expectations. Everything was about trying to reach a certain point at the age that you're at. My family's pretty conservative. And so, about that aspect. And I just never really felt I had a chance, in a sense, to really kind of focus on my well being or just focus on just my mental health, just because everything was about competition, everything was about, success in life, and not really talking about, my success within my mental well being, I guess. Right. So, it did feel like I'm just glad that it happened, better late than never. Um, and the more that I think about just going through the process rather than thinking about those outcomes I just feel like I'm living a more fuller life. I mean, in this sense, that kind of changed my career direction too. So,
That's really exciting. Can you say more about how your life became richer and fuller when you focused on your mental health?
yeah, because I was really just focusing more on those moments, just like enjoying the process of, feeling better about my riding, my cycling, feeling better about, just focusing on those, just the progress that I was making, just kind of focus on the next, I don't know, just like the next job, the next, yeah, I don't know how to really explain that part, but it just felt like I had more time to reflect than anything else.
It sounds like it was a really big challenge to the culture you grew up with to
Mhm.
switch out of competition and being outcome driven and perfectionism over to valuing yourself and your mental health. Was there something that changed that belief?
Um, it, I think I just sort of got a confirmation, through my therapy process that yes, that this was like the type of person that you wanted to become, right? Or this is the type of person that you are. Or, but except for that, and the more that just more that I explored myself, I obviously just wanted to become more of that person rather than trying to become a person that I want, that I not inspire or aspire to become. It's more like of what other people thought that I would become, right?
Yeah.
So,
Or maybe who you thought you should be. You're
yeah.
now like kind of surrendering into and relaxing into who you are rather than who you should be.
No, yeah, absolutely. And that's probably the reason why even though I feel, during the coronavirus pandemic, I just felt pretty dull, this whole entire time. Thankfully I have my dog, I haven't actually been writing as much, but I there is still some confidence and I don't feel depressed. Nothing, my daily routines don't feel like a chore. So, having that said, I definitely feel like I've progressed, from at least 3 years ago.
And can you say how kind of learning more about yourself, your identity, and who you are had such like large consequences for what your life will be in the future, specifically through your career?
Yeah, it's I sorry, can you say that question again? I literally forgot.
Yeah, no problem. Can you say more about how learning about who you are and your identity and what you value and believe in, how did that impact what you've chosen to do for a living?
Oh yeah. I mean, it completely impacted my career direction. Um, the more that I don't know how to really answer this. It's just, the more that for example, the Meyer-Briggs test, and all these other personality tests. And as much as I want to take them with a grain of salt, it was kind of like the person. I mean, I always felt like I was that type of person in terms of I love to advocate and to support others. I didn't have like much competition like within me. And so probably that's the reason why that, going for law school or going, trying to go through the conventional route of getting a career that just felt so foreign to me. Working in an office for 70 hours a week or things like that. It still doesn't sound right. And the more that I realized of a people person that I am, and the more that I realized that I really like just being around people and helping them out, the more that I felt like I wanted to be in the helping profession. And from going from like, doing law or business or events management and now doing, going into the social work helping industry, it's kind of a big change. And for some reason, it just feels so right at the moment. Uh, and I feel so much better about myself and who I am as a person, doing something that I know that is fulfilling me and my values.
Great. It seems like your life sounds richer and fuller in a number of different ways. So, externally, kind of what you choose to put your time into, and also internally, how you relate to yourself. Do you want
Mhm.
to say more about those two concepts?
Uh, yeah. I mean, now they're more in sync. Does that make sense? Um,
Absolutely.
like I don't feel everything that I kind of like show outwardly. It feels like okay, now I'm actually, kind of like showcasing or portraying what I actually truly believe in now. So my internal thoughts or what I value inside, this was different from before because I had those same internal thoughts maybe, but my outwardly showing or just how I presented myself it just felt different and nothing was ever in sync. And I always felt that maybe that's the reason why I felt misaligned with my values at the time, or just nothing felt right within me. All these weird sensations that always happen. So
I'm
yeah.
really here. Yeah, I'm really happy to hear that your internal experience and your outward experience like started to sync up. The more
Right.
you kind of explored yourself and your internal world, and your values, your identity, and your beliefs.
Mhm.
So I'm so happy to hear about all of that. Is there anything else about your journey that you want to share?
Uh, nothing in particular. I think the last thing I would like to say is that, and feel free to cut this part out, is I actually never thought how much therapy would actually help me. And so, in the very beginning, I obviously had no expectations in terms of, um, how this even would affect me in some way, because, my mind had a very black and white, stereotypical perspective on what a therapy experience is all about. I'm so glad that that's all wrong in a sense. And it actually went above and beyond what I uh, would have expected when it came to my own mental well being. And so, even therapy had completely changed the way that completely changed my career direction into where I want to be now. And so, yeah, I just know that this is effective. I know that it works. And if people just put their heads into it, and because they're the only ones that can make the change, uh, that it can happen. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree. The therapy process can help you explore, it can guide you and support you, but you're the one that makes the change. I'm just so
absolutely.
happy to hear that you grew the way you did. So thank you for sharing and thanks
Thank
for
you
being on
so
the
much,
show.
Maggie. Yeah, thank you,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.